Snow drifts across Grey Hollow like a whispered warning, soft enough to hide a secret, cold enough to freeze a heartbeat. And on a quiet winter evening, a police officer and his loyal German shepherd stepped into a mystery that would change every soul it touched. A lost child with eyes too old for her age, a mother who vanished without a trace, and footprints in the snow that never should have been there. Tonight, you're about to hear a story where courage walks on four paws, hope hides in the smallest clues, and a family is rebuilt from the ruins of fear. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from right now? Drop a comment so we can greet you properly, and wherever you are, I hope your day has been gentle, warm, and filled with a little bit of light. Grey Hollow, a small mountain town tucked against the northern ridge of Oregon, woke that morning beneath a sky smeared in pale winter blue, the kind that carried a faint metallic chill even indoors. Cedar Brook Regional Airport, the modest, two-terminal outpost serving the entire region, buzzed with its usual mixture of skiers, truckers, and locals flying out for supply runs. Outside, the wind swept across the tarmac like a slow-moving blade, rattling the loose siding of the maintenance shed and sending small spirals of frost drifting across the concrete. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed weakly as though resisting the cold that seeped beneath every door. Officer Caleb Morgan, a 36-year-old patrolman with a sharp jawline, storm gray eyes, and a physique built from years of mountain rescue work rather than gym training, walked briskly through Terminal B with a practiced confidence. His dark brown hair, kept short for duty, bore only a touch of silver at the temples, streaks earned during nights of grief rather than age. Caleb was known in Grey Hollow as the quiet officer, steady, responsible, always the first to volunteer for disaster search teams, and always the last to speak during department meetings. What most people didn't mention aloud was the loss that had carved invisible grooves into him, the fire 3 years ago that took his wife and young daughter, leaving behind an ache he never voiced, and a small cabin he rarely called home. Walking at his left heel, moving with disciplined precision, was Ranger, a 7-year-old German shepherd with a thick black and tan coat, and eyes the color of warm amber. Ranger was well-built, muscular but not bulky, and carried himself with the balanced confidence of a veteran K-9 officer. Calm under pressure, loyal to a fault, and frighteningly perceptive, Ranger had been Caleb's partner long before the tragedy, and the only living being who saw the man's grief behind the controlled exterior. Ranger's senses were sharp, honed through training and nature. He could distinguish emotion by posture alone, and often leaned against Caleb's leg on the days when silence felt too heavy. Today, Caleb was on a tight schedule. He had been subpoenaed to testify in a federal case in Portland, and he hated rushing through airports. Too many strangers, too many reminders of the day he had raced through crowded corridors, trying to reach a hospital that was already too late. But duty didn't wait for emotion. He adjusted the strap of his duffel on his shoulder, checked his boarding pass, and kept walking. Ranger trotted along until suddenly he didn't. Just past Gate 9, Ranger stopped dead, muscles stiffening beneath his coat. Caleb nearly walked a few steps before noticing the absence of footsteps beside him. He turned. Ranger's ears were tilted forward, his nostrils flared slightly. The dog's stance didn't signal a threat. It signaled distress. Human distress. "You smell something?" Caleb murmured, lowering his voice instinctively. Ranger gave a low, soft whine. Then he turned, moving toward Gate 12. Caleb followed, unsure what they were walking into. As they approached the waiting area, the noise of rolling suitcases and overlapping conversations faded beneath a peculiar tension in the air, a hush that felt out of place. And then Caleb saw her. A little girl, no more than 6, sat curled on a metal bench beside the window. Her knees were tucked to her chest, her thin arms wrapped tightly around a worn brown teddy bear, missing one button eye. Her hair, a tangled chestnut brown, fell over her face, and her clothes were mismatched, a too large sweatshirt, faded jeans, and sneakers that had once been pink. Her cheeks were streaked with dried tears. This was Ava Lee, though Caleb didn't know her name yet. Ava had a delicate frame, like a child who'd grown up somewhere where warmth came rarely and food sometimes even less. Her pale complexion hinted at long hours spent indoors or under poor care, But her eyes, when she finally lifted them, were something else entirely. Soft, haunted, a gentle hazel clouded with the kind of fear children shouldn't know. Not wide, dramatic fear, quiet, resigned fear. The kind that sinks, not screams. Ranger approached first, lowering his head, tail neutral, posture gentle. Ava flinched only for a second, then stilled, watching the dog with tense fascination. Caleb knelt at a respectful distance, palms open, voice warm but steady. "Hey there, are you lost?" Ava hugged the bear closer, shaking her head weakly. Her lower lip trembled before she whispered, almost inaudible, "Mom said, she said if I sit still, she'll come back. I've been sitting still." Caleb's breath caught, not visibly, not enough for the girl to notice, but enough that Ranger flicked an ear toward him. Caleb had heard the despair of abandoned kids on emergency calls, the jagged panic of neglect victims, the silent shock of trauma. But this wasn't panic. This was a child still trying to believe in someone who had already disappeared. "When did you last see her?" Caleb asked softly. Ava blinked slowly. "I don't know. She told me to sit here. I tried to be good." Caleb exhaled long through his nose, steadying himself. Ranger edged closer until Ava tentatively reached out and touched his fur, her fingers trembling as if touch itself was a fragile privilege. "What's your name?" Caleb asked. After a long pause, "Ava." "Okay, Ava, I'm Officer Caleb, and this is Ranger. We want to help you." Her eyes flicked toward him, uncertain. Children trusted slowly when they had been taught to fear quickly. Caleb signaled to a nearby airline employee, a woman in her early 50s named Sharon Whitmore, the check-in supervisor for Terminal B. Sharon was tall, thin, with short salt and pepper hair, and a face shaped by years of dealing with panicked passengers and overtime shifts. She carried the kind of motherly impatience that masks deep empathy. Sharon's personality mixed stern efficiency with a soft spot for anyone struggling alone. She had lost her son to a hiking accident years ago, a grief that made her quieter but gentler with frightened children. When she approached and saw Ava, Sharon's expression softened instantly. "Sweetheart, where are your parents?" Ava shrank at the question, pressing into Ranger's shoulder. Sharon's face darkened with concern. Caleb stood. "We need to notify airport security and social services." Sharon nodded, hurrying off. Caleb stayed near the bench with Ava and Ranger, giving the child room while keeping her in sight. As minutes passed, crowds swirled around them, travelers rushing, families laughing, suitcases clattering, yet no one stopped. Ava occasionally glanced at the entrance, hope flickering like a dying candle. Each time a woman walked by in a winter coat, Ava stiffened, breath catching, but the woman always kept moving. Ranger lay with his front paws extended and his massive head low, letting Ava rest her tiny hand on his fur. There was an instinctive bond forming, one Caleb had never seen Ranger make so quickly. After about 15 minutes, Troy Sanders, the airport security officer, arrived. Troy was in his early 40s with a bulky build, buzzed blonde hair, and a permanent posture of someone always ready to sprint during emergencies. He was a straightforward, calm man, polite, methodical, and experienced with lost children or travelers in panic. But even he paused for an extra beat when he saw Ava clinging to Ranger. "We'll check the footage," Troy said. "See when she arrived and who she came with." Caleb nodded as Troy walked back toward the security office. Meanwhile, Ava whispered, "She said she'd come back. Did I wait wrong?" Caleb swallowed hard. "You did everything right, Ava." Her eyes filled, not spilling, just quietly brimming. "People who should stay sometimes don't," he said gently, glancing at Ranger. Ava looked at him then, really looked, and her shoulders sagged as though finally believing him. Caleb checked the time. His flight was in 20 minutes, but the decision was already made. Duty wasn't always sworn in a courtroom. Sometimes it sat trembling on a metal bench hugging a bear with one eye. Ranger leaned closer, placing his head under Ava's hand as if anchoring her in place. "We'll stay right here," Caleb said. "You're not alone anymore." And in that moment, something shifted, not loudly, not visibly, but like a hinge easing open after years of rust. Caleb didn't know what storm awaited ahead: false allegations, a network of lies, or the girl's haunted past. Only that Ranger had stopped for a reason, and Caleb Morgan was not a man who ignored the sound of a child's breaking heart. The drive from Cedarbrook Airport to Gray Hollow wound through miles of winter-bitten pines, the road thin and slick where early frost clung stubbornly to the asphalt. The sky had begun to fade from washed-out blue into a dim, pale silver, hinting that the afternoon would darken early, as it often did in this mountain valley. Inside the patrol SUV, the heater hummed faintly, filling the cabin with a soft warmth that contrasted sharply with the cold world outside. Ava sat in the back seat, buckled tightly, her small hands holding her teddy bear, and one side wrapped protectively around Ranger, who lay pressed against her legs. The German shepherd rested calmly, but kept his gaze alert, tracking each noise, each shift in Ava's breathing. Caleb adjusted the rearview mirror once more, checking on her, careful not to make his gaze obvious, not wanting to spark fear. Ava's eyes stayed fixed on the passing forest outside the window. She wasn't crying. She wasn't talking. She was simply existing, small and quiet, as though hoping silence could keep her invisible. The silence broke only when Caleb's radio crackled. "Unit 3, this is dispatch. Child Services confirms no matching records yet. They'll continue digging. Over." Caleb responded quickly. "Copy that." He didn't mention that the absence of records was already concerning. Children almost always left digital footprints behind: school enrollment, hospital visits, daycare forms, even library cards. But Ava, nothing yet. She was like a faint outline with no ink to define her. Ranger lifted his head and nudged Ava's arm. She blinked down at him, her fingers automatically curling around his ear. The connection between them had formed so quickly and so naturally that Caleb wondered what her life had lacked for such attachment to occur within minutes. 10 minutes later, the SUV turned down the long gravel road leading to the edge of Gray Hollow. A cabin store, a gas station, and a few scattered houses blurred past. At a four-way stop stood a man waving a shovel, Harold Pines, one of the town's road crew. Harold was in his late 50s, tall and slightly hunched from decades of labor, with a gray beard thick enough to trap snowflakes. He had a gruff, straightforward manner and spoke with sentences shorter than winter days. Despite his stern exterior, he was known for quietly delivering firewood to shut-ins during heavy storms. Caleb rolled the window down. Harold leaned in, raising thick brows. "Storm tonight," he grunted, his breath fogged instantly in the cold. "Road'll freeze early. You heading home?" "Yeah," Caleb said. "Thanks for the heads up." Harold's eyes shifted toward the back seat. He spotted Ava, but didn't ask questions. Harold was the type to file information without speaking it. He simply nodded once, a silent expression of concern, and returned to shoveling. The SUV continued toward Caleb's cabin. Ava spoke for the first time since they left the airport. Her voice was soft, almost apologetic. He looked mad. "Harold?" Caleb shook his head. "That's just how he looks. He's kind underneath." Ava processed that, hugging her teddy closer. Ranger licked her hand as if affirming Caleb's words. They arrived at the cabin shortly after, the tall evergreens creaking softly overhead as a breeze shivered through their branches. Caleb parked and carried Ava's small suitcase, while Ranger trotted protectively between them. Inside, the cabin's cedar scent filled the air. Ava froze in the entryway, her tiny body stiffening in fear, eyes darting to the ceiling, then to the narrow hallway, then back to Ranger. Caleb quickly realized she wasn't afraid of the house. She was afraid of being inside any unfamiliar space. Kneeling, he softened his voice. "This is home for now, okay? You can move anywhere you want. Nothing is locked." Ava's lips parted slightly as if absorbing the concept of a home with no locked doors. Caleb flicked on the soft lamp by the door, letting warm yellow light spill across the living room. "Come on," he said gently. "Let me show you around." Ava followed Ranger, who moved slowly, lowering his head to reassure her. Caleb guided her through the cabin, the small but tidy kitchen, the hallway leading to the spare room, the bathroom with a nightlight plugged in near the floor. When they reached the room that would become hers, Ava hesitated again. If I sleep?" Will someone close the door? Only if you want it closed, Caleb answered. If you want it open, it stays open, always. Ranger nudged her back, encouraging her inside. Ava stepped timidly into the room. She traced her fingers along the quilt on the bed, then glanced at the doorway as if expecting someone to snap it shut behind her. Caleb made sure he stayed visible in the hall. As Ava explored silently, there came a knock on the cabin door, sharp but familiar. Ranger's ears perked immediately, but his tail wagged once. Caleb opened the door to find Serena Walsh, a detective from the Gray Hollow Police Department. Serena was in her late 30s, tall, angular, and with sharp hazel eyes that missed nothing. Her curly auburn hair was tied back loosely, and her expression blended exhaustion with determination, the trademark look of a woman juggling too many cases and not enough hours. She had been partners with Caleb years ago before he transferred to K-9 duty. Serena's personality was resilient, dry-humored, and fiercely protective of her team. After losing her younger brother to drug addiction, she'd grown more hardened, more unwilling to overlook small details. "Heard from dispatch," she said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. "Wanted to check on you." Caleb sighed. "It's been a morning." Serena spotted Ava peeking from behind Ranger. The detective's expression softened almost instantly, revealing the gentler side she kept hidden. "Hey there, sweetheart," she said with a small smile. Ava hid behind her teddy again. Serena didn't push. Instead, she lowered her voice to Caleb. "Troy sent me the footage." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Then you saw how she left her." Serena nodded grimly. "That wasn't forgetfulness. That was disposal." Caleb exhaled slowly, keeping his voice steady. "Lydia wants her to stay with me temporarily." "Good," Serena said firmly. "Better here than a crowded shelter." She paused, glancing toward Ava's room. "Want me to run a check on the woman from the footage?" Caleb nodded. "Anything you can find." Serena squeezed his arm once, a gesture of solidarity, a silent, "I'm here," and left. When the door shut, Ava whispered, "She won't take me?" "No," Caleb said. "She's a detective. She helps people." Ava nodded slowly, reassured more by Ranger's steady presence than Caleb's words. Night crept in early, shadows settling between the pine trees outside. Caleb prepared a simple dinner, soup and warm bread, and Ava sat quietly at the table, flinching at each clink of dishes until Ranger pressed against her leg again. She ate slowly, as if unsure whether she was allowed to. After dinner, Caleb helped her settle into bed, leaving the door open wide and the hallway light on. Ranger curled up beside her bed without being asked. "Will Ranger stay all night?" Ava asked. "Every second," Caleb promised. She placed her small hand on the dog's back. "Then I can sleep." And for the first time since he found her, she closed her eyes without trembling. Caleb stepped into the hall, leaned against the wall, and let the weight of the day wash over him. The house felt different now, not just occupied, but breathing, as if the arrival of one frightened child had stirred the air in ways grief never could. Something had begun, something fragile, something steady, and something that would change all of their lives. The storm reached Gray Hollow before dawn, sweeping down from the northern cliffs with a force that made the pine trees groan under the weight of slanting ice. By the time the sun should have risen, the sky remained a smothering gray lid, thick with snowflakes drifting in unpredictable spirals. The cabin's windows rattled faintly as wind curled around the eaves. Inside, warmth glowed from the fireplace, casting steady light across the wooden walls. Ranger lay stretched near the hearth, ears flicking with every gust, while Caleb brewed coffee in the kitchen. He glanced toward the hallway where Ava still slept, her door open wide, Ranger keeping guard as promised. It was the first morning in months Caleb had woken to a quiet house that didn't feel empty. A fragile new rhythm lingered in the air, unsteady yet alive. A soft tapping sounded at the cabin door. Ranger lifted his head but didn't bark. His posture stayed calm, suggesting he recognized the visitor. Caleb opened the door and found Mrs. Marlene Whitford, Gray Hollow's mail carrier, standing with snow clinging to her shoulders. Marlene was in her early 60s, round-faced and cheerful, despite life's edges wearing down parts of her spirit. She had silver hair tucked under a wool cap, and she walked with a slight limp, a remnant of an old injury from slipping on the frozen steps of the town library years ago. Despite the limp, she was still stubbornly committed to delivering mail, no matter what the sky throws, as she always said. "Morning, Caleb," she greeted, her breath steaming in the cold. "Got a handful for you today, and a question." Caleb accepted the envelopes, glancing at them briefly. "What question?" "Well," Marlene lowered her voice, as though the trees might overhear. "The folks at Cedarbrook Airport told the post office to keep an eye out for any mail addressed to a little girl named Ava Lee. Thought you'd know something about that." Caleb's heartbeat kicked higher, not in panic, but in alertness. "Why? Did someone call to claim her?" "No calls," Marlene said. "But yesterday, a piece of mail came through sorting. No return address, no city stamp, just Ava L. in handwriting. The system flagged it as incomplete." Caleb's jaw tightened. "Can I see it?" Marlene shook her head apologetically. "Regulations, but I can tell you what I noticed, because I'm old enough not to care what the handbook thinks." She leaned slightly closer. The handwriting looked rushed, uneven, like someone wrote it while moving. Caleb's mind sharpened. Whoever abandoned Ava might be trying to reach her, or silence her. "If anything else comes, let me know directly," he said. Marlene nodded, patted Ranger's head, and trudged back into the snow. When Caleb shut the door again, Ranger stood and trotted toward Ava's room. A moment later, she emerged sleepily, hair messy and eyes half open. She still wore the oversized sweatshirt from the night before, sleeves dangling past her fingers. "Is it morning?" she whispered, rubbing her eyes. "It is," Caleb said gently. "Snowstorm's pretty loud, huh?" Ava nodded, glancing toward the window warily. "Storms used to mean hiding." Caleb felt something inside him break a little. He knelt in front of her. "Not here. Storms just mean hot cocoa and warm blankets." Ava considered this as if evaluating a foreign concept. Ranger nudged her hand, and she managed the smallest smile. After breakfast, simple toast and fruit, Caleb bundled Ava into a small winter coat he found in a storage box. It was a little too large, but warm and lined with fleece. "I used to keep spare clothes for rescue missions," he explained. Ava touched the sleeve gently, almost reverently, as though unused to receiving something meant for her. The storm slowed enough for Caleb to take Ranger out for a short patrol check around the property. Ava insisted on staying by the window, watching them through the glass. When they returned, cheeks dusted with snow, she was waiting with a blanket in her hands, held awkwardly, but with determination. "For Ranger," she said softly. Caleb accepted it with a warm nod. It wasn't about the blanket. It was about trust beginning to grow roots. Later, while Ava colored quietly at the kitchen table with worn pencils Caleb found in a drawer, a knock echoed through the cabin once more, this time sharper, urgent. Ranger stiffened immediately. Caleb opened the door to find Deputy Mark Holleran, a younger officer from the department. Mark, 29, lanky and slightly disheveled, looked like someone who lived on energy drinks and paperwork. His sandy blonde hair fell messily onto his forehead, and his expression was perpetually overwhelmed, but never unkind. Mark had joined the force after losing his father to a mountain accident, hoping to prevent others from facing similar tragedy. He admired Caleb deeply, viewing him as a mentor even when Caleb insisted he wasn't. "Caleb, sorry to barge in," Mark said, stepping inside and brushing snow off his jacket. "We ran the first preliminary search on the woman from the footage." Caleb felt Ava stiffen in her chair. Ranger moved to her side instantly, placing himself between her and the unknown visitor. "Show me," Caleb said. Mark handed him a printed still image, enhanced, sharpened. The woman's sunglasses made identification difficult, but the slope of her jawline and the angle of her posture were distinct enough to work with. "We found something odd," Mark continued. "No one matching her physical build bought a ticket at the airport. No ID, no boarding pass. She never got on a plane." Caleb frowned deeply. "Meaning she left the airport? On foot? Or someone picked her up?" "Possibly," Mark confirmed. "But here's the strange part. We saw her outside on the security cam, heading toward the economy parking lot. And then she vanished. No exit footage. No car license plates flagged, nothing. Caleb exchanged a glance with Ranger, who seemed just as unsettled. "Any leads?" Caleb asked. "One," Mark said quietly. A rental car agency near the highway said a woman came in the night before, asking about same-day rentals. No reservation, paid in cash, wore sunglasses inside. A chill, not from the storm, ran through Caleb's spine. Ava hugged her teddy bear tighter. "Is she coming back?" Caleb knelt beside her, lowering his voice. "If she does, Ranger and I won't let her near you." Ava nodded, still frightened but trusting. Mark cleared his throat awkwardly. "Sorry if I scared her. I just thought you should know." "You did the right thing," Caleb assured. Mark left shortly afterward, and the cabin settled again into quiet, though not quite the same calm as before. As evening fell, the storm intensified, snow battering the windows. Ava sat on the rug with Ranger, tracing her fingers through his fur. Caleb watched her silently, noticing how she flinched at every whistle of wind against the roof. He moved closer, sitting on the floor beside her. "Storms won't hurt you here," he repeated. Ava hesitated, then whispered, "When storms came before, she used to put me under the stairs, said I needed to be quiet so the house wouldn't break." Caleb felt his throat tighten. Ranger pressed his nose to her cheek, and Ava buried her face in his fur. Caleb laid a gentle hand on her back, his voice low. "No stairs here, no dark places, just us." Ava's breathing steadied. The fire crackled softly, casting warm light around them. Outside, the storm raged. Inside, something small but powerful took root. The first steps of safety, of healing, of connection. And though neither Caleb nor Ava realized it yet, the woman who abandoned her was not merely running. She was hiding, and others were helping her. The next morning dawned colorless. Snow dusted the evergreens, and a gray mist crawled over Wintermere Lake like smoke from a dying fire. The coal cabin stood silent except for the faint hum of the heater and the occasional creak of the old wood. Ethan had left before sunrise for an assignment he couldn't refuse. A quick trip to Seattle to escort a witness in a case that could unravel months of investigation. He'd promised Lila he'd be back by the weekend, his voice soft but weary when he kissed her forehead. Miranda watched from the porch as his truck disappeared down the icy road. Her breath rose in slow, steady clouds. The cold bit her cheeks, but she didn't flinch. "Back by the weekend," she muttered to herself. "Always the weekend." Inside, the house was immaculate, too perfect. The kind of perfection that felt hollow. She turned sharply and began rearranging the kitchen shelves, moving jars by size and color. A ritual that gave her the illusion of control. Upstairs, Lila sat at her desk, coloring quietly. Ranger lay by her feet, his head resting on his paws. The German shepherd's coat shimmered in the morning light, black, tan, and gold, blending like storm and sun. Every so often, his ears twitched toward the door, attuned to every sound below. Lila leaned down to whisper, "Daddy said we could make snow angels when he comes back." Ranger's tail thumped twice. The sound of footsteps echoed up the stairs. Miranda appeared in the doorway, her posture rigid, lips pressed into a line. "Put your things away. We're visiting town." Lila hesitated. "Can Ranger come?" "No, he stays here." Miranda's tone left no room for negotiation. By noon, the snow had melted into slush along Main Street. Wintermere was a small town stitched together with coffee shops, a post office, and the local police precinct. Miranda walked briskly, her gloved hand gripping Lila's tightly. They stopped at the grocery store, where the scent of roasted coffee and fresh bread filled the air. Behind the counter stood Nora Briggs, a woman in her late 40s, petite with streaks of silver through her dark curls. She'd been Wintermere's post clerk for nearly 2 decades and carried herself with a warmth that made strangers linger. Her husband had drowned in the lake years ago, but she never left town. Grief had deepened her kindness instead of hardening it. "Well, if it isn't Miss Lila," Nora said, smiling, "you've grown taller since last month." Lila smiled shyly. "I'm 6.5 now." "That half makes all the difference," Nora winked, handing her a peppermint stick from a jar. Before Lila could thank her, Miranda interjected smoothly, "She doesn't eat candy, Mrs. Briggs. We're watching sugar intake." Nora's smile faded just slightly. Of course. Just thought I'd brighten her day. Miranda's tone softened, though the smile never reached her eyes. She has everything she needs at home. They finished shopping in silence. Outside, the clouds thickened. Miranda walked faster, her heels striking the pavement in clipped rhythm. Behind her, Lila trailed quietly, holding the brown paper bag that was too heavy for her small arms. When they returned home, Ranger met them at the door, tail wagging. Miranda pushed him aside with her leg. "Out!" she snapped. "You're tracking mud again." The dog slunk away, ears flattened, though his eyes lingered protectively on Lila. That night, after dinner, Miranda received a video call on the laptop. Ethan's face appeared on the screen, dim hotel lighting behind him, exhaustion in his eyes, but still that steady warmth that made Lila's chest ache with longing. "Hey, my girls," he said. "How's everyone holding up?" Lila smiled brightly. "I drew a new picture, Daddy." She held it up to the screen, a crayon drawing of her, Ethan, and Ranger skating on the frozen lake. Miranda wasn't in it. "That's beautiful, sweetheart," Ethan said, voice cracking slightly. "I'll frame it when I get home." "She's been doing very well," Miranda interjected smoothly, stepping behind Lila's chair. "Lots of studying and good behavior." Ethan nodded, distracted by paperwork beside him. "That's great. I'll be back in 2 days. Be good, okay?" Lila nodded, but her eyes were shadowed. The call ended, leaving the screen dark. Miranda stood behind her for a long moment, staring at the reflection, mother and daughter side by side, yet worlds apart. "You need to stop living in drawings, Lila," she said quietly. "Reality isn't made of crayons." Later, Lila couldn't sleep. The wind rattled her window, and Ranger's low breathing was the only comfort in the dark. She reached down, pressing her hand against his back. "Ranger," she whispered, "do you think Daddy would still love me if I was bad?" The dog lifted his head, amber eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight, and licked her hand. She smiled faintly. "I think so too." Downstairs, Miranda poured herself a glass of wine, the red liquid catching the flicker of firelight. Her phone buzzed, an unfamiliar number. She hesitated, then answered. A man's voice came through, deep, gravelly. "You still living near the lake, Doc?" She froze. The nickname pulled her years back. Before Ethan, before Wintermere, before she had tried to reinvent herself. "Who is this?" "You know who," the voice said. "We've got a situation brewing. Might be good for you to have eyes on it." "I don't do that anymore," she said sharply. "You don't, huh? You still keep records, though. Patient reports, incident files. You kept one on Ethan Cole." Her heart lurched. "You stay away from my family." "Family?" the voice laughed, then hung up. Miranda's hands shook as she set, the glass down. A small streak of wine spilled onto the counter, dark as blood. She stared at it, her mind racing. The next day, Ethan's partner, Lieutenant Marcus Harper, called. Harper was a man in his early 40s, with a weathered face, sandy hair, and a sardonic humor that made him well-liked in the precinct. He'd served with Ethan since their academy days, surviving the same chaotic deployments. "Ethan's still in Seattle," he said when Miranda picked up. "Tell him the department got another burglary report near the lake. Same M.O. as before. We're running checks on a transient staying near old Cabin 14. Miranda frowned. "Cabin 14? "Yeah, out past the Ridge Road. No one's used it in years." Harper paused. "Tell him to call me when he gets in." After the call, Miranda stood by the window, watching the snow drift in slow spirals. The lake seemed to stretch forever, serene, deceptive. For the first time, she wondered if she'd made a mistake moving here. That afternoon, Lila snuck into her father's study, clutching her worn notebook. Ranger followed, nails clicking softly on the floor. She climbed onto the leather chair, spinning it once just because it felt daring. On the desk sat a small wooden box she'd never seen before. Inside, beneath old badges and photographs, was a folded letter. She couldn't read all the words, but one line made her pause. "If anything happens, tell Miranda the truth about Seattle." Before she could make sense of it, a voice snapped from the doorway. "What are you doing in here?" Lila jumped, the box slipping from her hands. Papers scattered across the floor like startled birds. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Miranda's face was pale with rage. "You had no right." She stopped herself mid-sentence, then exhaled through her nose, forcing calm. "Clean it up, now." Lila bent down quickly. Ranger stepped between them, ears tilted back, tail low but alert. Miranda's eyes flicked toward the dog. "You're making her defiant," she hissed under her breath. When Lila finished, Miranda took the box and locked it in the drawer. "Go upstairs." That night, the storm rolled in from the north, heavy and relentless. The wind howled through the cracks, shaking the window panes. In her bed, Lila clung to Ranger, whispering stories about her father's return. Downstairs, Miranda sat in the dark, laptop open to a police database. She typed one name, Marcus Harper, then another, Cabin 14. The search results glowed in the dim light, restricted files, sealed reports. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. "What are you hiding from me, Ethan?" she whispered. Outside, Ranger stirred in his sleep, a low growl rumbling in his throat as thunder rolled across Wintermere Lake. Snow fell over the abandoned quarry like drifting ash, thick enough to swallow sound and deep enough to erase the past. Caleb Holt stood at the edge of the ravine, breath sharp against the freezing wind, Ranger at his side with his black and tan coat bristling. The courageous German shepherd was 9 years old, large and powerful, with intelligent amber eyes that carried both loyalty and scars. He nudged Caleb's hand once, urging him forward as if to say, "Time is running out." Behind them, Serena, Mark, Alex Navarro, and Theo gathered close, forming a small circle around Ava, who clutched her torn teddy bear like a lifeline. The girl's breath trembled, but her feet remained steady. She had her mother's courage. She had her mother's fire. Caleb knelt to her height. "Ava, one last time. Are you sure she's here?" Ava's eyes, wide and frightened, stared down into the dark quarry pit. "Mama said the bad men hide where the trees fall and the earth swallows the sound. And this place, it feels like that." Ranger pressed against her gently, a soft rumble in his chest, as if offering protection. Ava touched the dog's face. "He hears it too. He knows." The descent was brutal. The path spiraled down through jagged rock and uneven ice, each step echoing with the possibilities of danger. At the base of the quarry, a tunnel entrance yawned open, large enough for trucks, its metal door hanging crooked as if ripped off by force. "This wasn't abandoned," Alex murmured, his tall frame tensed, his dark eyes narrowed. "This was used recently." Serena swept her flashlight across the ground, boot prints, drag marks, and a thin trail of blood disappearing inside the tunnel. Ava's voice cracked. "That's Mama's bracelet?" Theo lifted the small silver charm, dented and stained. The quiver in his gentle face revealed everything. "She's close. Or she was." "We move," Caleb said. Inside the tunnel, dark concrete walls squeezed in like a cold throat. The air tasted metallic. Ranger advanced slowly, ears flat, tail stiff, not afraid, but fully in battle mode. They followed the winding passage until light flickered ahead. Mark signaled everyone to slow. Caleb motioned for Ava to stay behind him. She grabbed Theo's coat, trying not to cry. "Don't let them hurt Mama again." Caleb's hand rested on her head. "I won't." Then he stepped into the final chamber. 3 armed men stood around a woman bound to a chair, her hair tangled, her wrists bruised. Elise, Ava's mother. A woman once bright as spring rain, now pale and exhausted, yet still possessing a quiet strength in her posture. She lifted her head slowly, and the moment she saw Ava behind Caleb, her breath broke in a sob. "Baby!" One mercenary spun, raising his weapon. He didn't get the chance to aim. Ranger lunged with precise, trained power, knocking the man to the ground and clamping down on his arm. The gun clattered across the concrete. Chaos erupted. Serena and Alex charged in. Mark tackled another attacker. Caleb went for Elise, snapping her restraints loose. "Are you hurt?" "I'm okay," she whispered, though her trembling body told another story. "Where's Ava?" "She's safe," Caleb said. "She's here." Ava ran into the room, Theo at her heels. "Mama!" Elise fell to her knees and pulled the girl into her arms, sobbing into her hair. The moment was so raw, it silenced even the battle. It felt like God himself had paused time to let a mother feel her child again. Caleb turned, too late. The third mercenary emerged from the shadows, raising a knife. Elise gasped. Ava screamed. Ranger spun away from his pinned opponent and hurled himself forward like a bolt of lightning. The blade scraped his shoulder, but he didn't stop. He knocked the man back, giving Alex just enough time to disarm and drop him. Silence rippled across the chamber until Elise whispered, God sent you. Caleb breathed out, shaking. We're not out yet. We need to move. More might be coming. But when they emerged from the tunnel, the night sky opened above them, not with danger, but with sirens and flashing lights. Backup had finally broken through the jammed signal. Officers swarmed the quarry. Elise was taken to an ambulance, Ava never letting go of her hand. Ranger stood proudly beside Caleb, bleeding but wagging his tail slowly, refusing to show weakness. Later that night, in the warmth of the station, Elise gave her statement. She explained everything: the traffickers, the debts they controlled, the threats that forced her to run and hide Ava for years. Serena asked gently, "Why leave so many clues?" Elise looked at her daughter. "Because no matter how much they scared me, I believed God would put the right people in our path. And he did." When Elise finished, she turned to Caleb. "You saved her, and me." "Ranger saved us all," Caleb said, stroking the dog's fur as the shepherd leaned against his leg. Elise smiled softly. "Maybe both of you were sent." In the days that followed, the investigation unraveled the trafficking ring. Arrests spread across 3 states. Elise and Ava found a safe home with support from Alex Navarro's department. Theo, who had been the gentle anchor through everything, visited often. And Ranger, hero, guardian, miracle on 4 paws, recovered quickly. On a clear Sunday morning, Elise and Ava stood outside the police station with Caleb and Ranger. Ava placed a hand on Ranger's head. "You're my angel," she whispered. Elise looked at Caleb with quiet gratitude. "You believed her when no one else did." Caleb shrugged gently. "Sometimes a child's truth is the only truth that matters." Ava took her mother's hand. "Mama, can we pray?" Elise nodded. The 3 of them bowed their heads, Ranger sitting between them. Caleb stepped back, watching with a reverence he rarely showed. Snow drifted softly around them, gentle, peaceful, almost holy. And as their voices lifted quietly into the morning air, Caleb could swear he felt the world shift, as if God himself whispered back. And just like that, the story that began in fear ended in light. A mother restored, a child protected, a dog honored, and a town reminded that miracles still walk the earth, sometimes on 2 legs, sometimes on 4. In the quiet moments after the storm, when every path seems uncertain and every prayer feels small, God has a way of placing miracles right where we least expect them. Sometimes it is a loyal dog who refuses to give up. Sometimes it is a child's courage. And sometimes it is a stranger who stops, listens, and becomes the answer to a prayer whispered in fear. This story reminds us that God works through people and moments we never see coming. In our daily lives, we cross paths with those who are struggling, those who are forgotten, and those who carry silent battles. And in those moments, we are given a choice, the same choice our heroes had today, to become a light in someone's darkness. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who needs hope right now. Leave a comment and tell us what part resonated with you most. And if you believe that God still performs miracles through love, courage, and compassion, write amen in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another story of faith, kindness, and redemption. May God bless you, protect your family, and surround your home with peace today and always.